Matthew Golden looks like a star in limited reps, and the Packers defense dominates in a preseason finale win. We've got Coach Jags. We got Brandon Snide. I'm Peter Bukowski. It's a Locked On Packers squad show. Let's do it.
Go Pack Go! It's the Packers Squad. Sponsored by Game Time. Everything Green Bay Packers every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from Titletown. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From the frozen tundra with all the cheeseheads, the Packers Squad Show starts now.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski. I'm here with former Packers coach Jeff Jagosinski. Coach Jags in the building. Brandon Snide, you may know from Locked On Brewers Postcast, is with me. The Packers get a 20-7 win over the Seattle Seahawks. This show for the sickos. Shout out to the sickos, the football sickos that are here with us on the Locked On Packers squad show, our inaugural run here in the preseason. And Jags, let's start here. When you're looking at these young players in the preseason, the Packers seem to do everything in their power to try and let's not talk about how great Matthew Golden is, but every day he makes a play and every game he makes a play. How do you internally sort of balance that? Hey, we're really excited about this guy, but let's not anoint him yet.
Yeah. No, I don't think you can anoint him yet, but he is a special talent. I mean, one playing at University of Texas, coming from a huge program and then being taken in the first round by the Packers, that's a big deal. And the expectations are going to be high for him. They're paying him a lot of money, to make a lot of plays. And he made a really big one today, right down the sideline, made a great catch, and I think we were talking about before the show is like, believe what you see.
Yeah.
If you're seeing it, that's what that kid is. Like if it was like, come on, you guys are like, come on, make a play. But he's not like that. He's making plays and he'll make a lot of plays. The thing that it's going to be interesting is to get the timing down with Love, because that's kind of what's lacked, right? Because of the injury and everything. So as fast as those guys can get together for the chemistry, that's what's going to make the difference with him and Love this year or early on in the season.
And Peter, I kind of want to flip it to you real quickly here to kind of piggyback off of your question to Coach Jags as well. When it comes to Matthew Golden, now you go all the way back to April with Matthew Golden, and I think obviously the hype is there. First round overall pick for a receiver. The Packers haven't done that in multiple decades, but it was Mark Murphy draft in Green Bay, the energy, the vibe outside, the weather was perfect. And then he goes to OTAs and he goes to mini camps and then he goes to training camp. And then of course the preseason, and has just shown flashes. You hear about Jordan Love. Every single player that talks about Matthew Golden brings up something else. Well, his footwork, his speed, his hands, his route running, how he practices, how he takes, approaches every day. My question for you, Peter, if I'm a Packer fan and I'm highly interested in rooting for Matthew Golden and I'm super excited, I want you to give me a reason as to why I should feel that way. We could talk about the play that he made today, but also on the other side of the pancake, tell me why I should why I should pump the brakes on the excitement I have if I'm a Packer fan surrounding Matthew Golden.
Oh, now I'm hungry. Now I'm talking about pancakes.
Well, I mean, Murph's pancakes in Milwaukee are just taking off. So go ahead.
Let's do it. So
or old lineman.
The thing that Jordan Love talked about when Jordan Love talked to Kay Adams the other day on her show Up in Adams, the first thing he brought up, she's talking about the speed, and he says the first thing is the hands, like his ability to make, and just like the play we saw, right? Not a perfect ball. He's not wide open. It's got to be my ball mentality. He's got to go make that play. And so he is the receiver. He's got to have better ball tracking than the DB. He's got to have better body control and adjusting to the ball better than the DB. And then he's got to have quicker, better hands than the DB, which is exactly what we saw. And when he's in that position to win, he's going to do it more often than not. And I think if you're a Packers fan, especially like you watched last year and you just go, can someone catch the ball, please? Someone one time catch a ball. Like it's this incredibly low bar here for these guys to make these sorts of plays. So if you're going to be worried a little bit, and people don't like when I do this because I was a little bit of a wet blanket on the pick when it was made. Everyone was very excited about it, but when I studied him, I didn't see the same special talent that a lot of other people did. And maybe that's just me. That's okay. But 5'11", 190, how many 5'11", 190 receivers consistently make adversity plays in the NFL? It's just hard to do at that size. I mean, how many times did Randall Cobb have to try and make an adversity play? Randall Cobb in his prime, that's a really good football player. It just wasn't in his bag. It wasn't what he did. And so can you make a living doing that stuff? I don't know. The name that I had heard thrown out in the pre-draft and the name that I came up with as I was like watching him, and I was just sort of like, he makes some of the plays that Stephon Diggs makes in tight quarters, where it's not he's going up and over somebody, but it's just like he gets to the ball better, faster, more naturally than the DB, because he's a receiver and not a DB, right? If a DB could catch, he'd play receiver.
You got that right.
So, if he can make those sorts of plays, then I think that is what can elevate him. I just worry at that size, can he do it consistently against, Reek Woolen, who wasn't out there, 6'4", 200 pounds, those kinds of corners. Jalen Johnson, who's what?
He did it during the joint practices, though. He did take him to school in the joint practices.
He did.
To be fair.
He did. And so, but that was him getting open. Can he do that consistently? That's the question for me. Can he continue to make those plays in those moments? I don't know. We'll see.
I found it hilarious that the first thing Jordan Love talked about with Kay Adams was the hands when it comes to Matthew Golden. Fantastic. Coach, I want to kind of spin it over to you. You've been in the room with some good quarterbacks, I would say, a couple of gold jackets in there, and welcoming guys into the NFL. And you mentioned it, talking it with the college speed to the NFL speed, and trying to acclimate them to that level. You're a coach of the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to take you back into the locker room. Talk to me how you're going to bring Matthew Golden up to speed. What are the things that these teams, these coaches, these quarterbacks, these offensive gurus, what are they doing to get these guys ready?
Well, there's going to be a learning curve for him. I mean, he's still a rookie, right? And he's going to make some rookie mistakes, but he's going to make some spectacular plays too. We're going to go like, that's what we've been expecting. So it's going to take some time for him to get acclimated to the game speed. And there's practice speed and there's game speed. It's just on a higher level. And I think that, he's a 4.3 is what you're saying, Brandon?
Yeah, 4.28.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I think I said 4.29, but 4.28 sounds better. I like that one.
It really does. But so he's 5'11", but you know what that 4.2 speed does? It makes him a 6'1" guy, because he's going to be able to run by people too. And Peter, you made a great point about when the ball's up in the air. Call that, in every wide receiver coach goes, it's the 50-50 ball, right? Because in the NFL, like you're here and that's open. Like the catch that he made today, he was open, right? And those guys ain't going to be getting like 5-10 yards behind people. It's just not like that. The quarterbacks are throwing BBs through doorknobs, right? The keyholes. That's how tight those throws have to be. But I think the more he gets acclimated to it, and again, I think the Love deal where those guys have to work together and get their timing down. That's the big question mark I've got right now.
I'm gonna put.
I heard a new one, Coach. I want to throw this at you. If you ever heard this one, I was talking to Steve Calhoun, Jordan Love's quarterback coach, and he said when Jordan is playing on balance, he can knock a wing off a butterfly.
Yep. So you can use the BB through a keyhole if you like, but it's just it'll be interesting to see. But it's just going to take some timing. It's going to be that. How long is before Jordan gets back in the mix here?
It sounds like he's going to be practicing, whether or not in full this week, but practicing. He did some work last week, 7-on-7. I think it's interesting. Matt LaFleur hates 7-on-7. We do see other coaches, other teams using 7-on-7 just because it's a little bit lighter on the body. But Matt wants everything full go. Like Matt wants everything team. He wants the blocking. He wants all that stuff. And I frankly think that's to his credit. I do wonder, Coach, you watch that Steve Sarkisian Texas team. Yeah. A lot of those concepts are things that are in Matt LaFleur's offense. And, so like you and I talked about this the other day. The offense is the offense, right? Like teams are running a lot of the same stuff. And like, I think that could potentially help him get up to speed. It's about, can you find that chemistry? Like we saw for years, Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson and then Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. That sort of chemistry. Does he have that with anyone on this roster right now? Like maybe Romeo Dobbs?
So. I don't think so. Dobbs, maybe. That was a nice touchdown he had today.
It was.
Yeah.
Were you surprised they didn't call that for Matthew Golden? Like if you're the coach, are you going, hey, like let's get 22 one of these?
I would like to. Yeah.
So Peter,
because that's what people want to see, right? So as far as the offenses, guys, they're not different now. They're just they're packaged different. That people may use, like the Dolphins use like a ton of motion and shifts and motions and all that. When you break it down, guys, everybody's really running the same thing. They really are. And they just have to take advantage of whoever they have in their skill set and then amplify what that looks like. Right. So like Sark was an NFL guy and he went to BYU, and that's West Coast right there. Lavelle Edwards. That was West Coast back when he was a player at BYU. And everybody's really running the same things, guys. Like we had the intersection, what did you call it today, Peter? Traffic.
Oh yeah, mesh traffic. Yeah.
Mesh traffic.
In
intersection. Yep.
Peter, I got a question for you. It's a weird. I was talking to Coach Jags prior to the show. Kind of a weird training camp for this team, health wise, right? Yeah. A lot of players out. If you follow me on social media, I'm a little bit hyper aggressive when it comes to worry. So I was already worried. I think week 1 or week 2, and then Jaden Reed walks out with a boot on his leg, and I'm like, oh great, even better. To the Matthew Golden talk, and this is for you, Peter. Jaden Reed in the boot. He's out of the boot. Still hasn't really practiced. Ontavian Wicks with the calf. We already know about Romeo Dobbs being great at what he does. The tight ends obviously are going to play a pivotal role in the Packers offense this season. Is it hyperbole to say that right now Matthew Golden is entering his rookie season in Green Bay as a first-round draft pick for the Packers as receiver number 1?
I think it is hyperbole to say he is entering the season as receiver number 1 because I think that's Romeo Dobbs.
Okay.
Is it hyperbole to say that he could be wide receiver 1 by like Thanksgiving? I don't think so. I think we could be looking at a guy who just is what is the old Steve Martin, like be so great they can't deny you. And I think that it may be the case where he's just so obviously the best guy that at a certain point, I mean, coach knows this, the players know, the players are going to see it, the coaches know. So even if you love Romeo Dobbs, it's sort of like the old Allen Lazard. Like once it became clear in 2022, Christian Watson was just much better than Allen Lazard. Guess what they stopped doing? Throwing the ball to Allen Lazard. And like, that's just what it has to be, I think, at a certain point. And, we saw this, and coach, you were on it early, 12 personnel, a lot of 2 tight end sets early on. And that means no Jaden Reed, guys, because they don't play Jaden Reed on the outside. When they're in 2 receiver sets, when they're in 12, when they're in 21, it's Golden and it's Dobbs. Now it might be Wicks and Dobbs or Wicks and Golden, but I think that gives him a leg up. Like if you're talking about fantasy stuff, just from an opportunity standpoint, I don't know that he's going to have the same opportunity as Jaden Reed as Matthew Golden, just by virtue of the fact that he's not going to be out there in these 2 receiver sets. I think the Packers, they're not going to major in it, but if they're in it 25, 30% of the time, I mean, I could see that.
Coach, I got a question for you. You were in the offensive room for quite a while and coached a lot of great players. Now, it's an ongoing discussion, certainly amongst Packer fans, is how do you keep everybody happy, right? And obviously when everybody's healthy, you don't. And that's kind of what I want to get to, though. That's a great, I mean, you're right, though.
Yeah.
Obviously getting the ball makes people happy. Obviously winning, as Matt LaFleur says, team before I.
Yep.
What goes into that? Like how is it like coaching a group of players, very, very talented? You talk about Wicks and Dobbs and Reed and now Matthew Golden. And I think a couple of them, Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember correctly, they had some tweets after Matthew Golden was drafted, like, okay, kind of like, we'll see, when training camp starts. But how do you manage a room like that with a lot of guys who are going to be on rookie contracts that are looking for that next contract? How do you manage that on and off the field?
I think what that's called is healthy competition. Healthy competition. I mean, and let's just talk about the wide receiver room, because there's quite a bit of talent there, and they see this guy. The Golden got the Golden contract, right? He got the big money, and all those other guys, they have to step up their game as well, right? That's what I'm saying. So it's healthy competition. And for the most part, the rooms I've always been in, everybody really pulls for each other. Like, can there be some selfishness sometime? Yeah, but as soon as they see it, I'm sure Coach LaFleur will get that out of them. You just can't let that happen. Yeah,
if it hurts your feelings, you're on the wrong business, right?
Well, you're gonna get your feelings hurt, and one of the things you have to have is short-term memory, because you're gonna get your ass chewed. And I don't know how LaFleur does it, if he does it like in front of everybody or because there's different styles.
Oh yeah, he does
different styles on
He's
how
done
to
it to
do
Anthony
it.
Belton multiple times in front of the cameras already in the last 2 games.
Yeah, well, he had another one today, right? Yeah, and the thing is, yeah, he got all over him. But I think what to your point, Brandon, is like the healthy competition, and everybody. And you're right. It's team before I. It's got to be that way, And when you see guys all pulling for each other, and those guys are in that room together all the time, right? They're in the locker room all the time. They're in the meeting rooms all the time. They're in the same huddle all the time. So for the most part, there's a really healthy respect in that sense on your football team.
Well, let's not let it get lost in the shuffle here. The Packers did win today, 20-7 over the Seattle Seahawks at Lambeau Field in the preseason finale. I want to pick the brain of Peter coming up, as well as Coach Jags, on what did we learn from not only this game, but the preseason and the training camp in general, as the Packers put a bow on their preseason, a 20-7 win. We'll talk about that coming up right after this. Today's Locked On Packers Squad Show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week. Sounds rough. Until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now is the time for you to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can always still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league as well. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now. That website, yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. The Packers getting the 20-7 win over the Seahawks at Lambeau Field. It included a couple of boxing matches on Thursday at the team's joint practice. We talked about Matthew Golden putting on a show. Only a one catch, but it was a show in my eyes. But I'm going to go to you, Peter, and kind of focus in kind of an overview about this training camp, this preseason for the Green Bay Packers. The expectations, as they always are, Coach Jags, you know this, they're level 10, Super Bowl or bust. Peter, what has stood out to you when you look back and you look at this preseason as a whole? What stood out to you in Green Bay?
Yeah, I think if you add training camp and you add the joint practices, I think sooner than we've ever seen with Matt LaFleur team, we're seeing the identity of this team come together on both sides of the ball. The plan, you go back to last year, Jordan Morgan, Marshawn Lloyd, Tyron Hopper, Javon Bullard, Edgerrin Cooper, that's the spine of your team. Then this year, Anthony Belton, you add Matthew Golden. I think we talked about it in the open, the 12 personnel, they want to play big. They want to play physical. It's more duo than outside zone now, right? With Matt LaFleur. And so we're seeing them run, more power. And we saw them run the single wing last year, for crying out loud, like some really crazy stuff. And yeah, Jags is excited about that.
I love that.
And then on defense, the turnover prioritization is everything. I mean, 4 turnovers in this game, the punching at the ball, the creating the interception. Evan Williams ends practice the other day with an interception, right? And against Seattle, that joint practice, that Warren Brinson absolutely ragdolls the left tackle, the starting left tackle for the Seahawks, gets in the face of Sam Darnold to force that interception. I think that mindset is so key that even though turnovers can be volatile and it's tough to do and it's tough to live solely on turnovers, but when you set that as a core identity, that I think is so vital. Like how many of those Bears teams, Jags, when you guys were playing them in those early 2000s, I mean, that all they did was create turnovers all the time. When it's your identity, that matters so much. And I did a radio hit the other day. Someone asked me, what is the identity of the Packers? I said adaptability, malleability. And I think you're seeing that the defensive disguises, the front changes, all this stuff that this team is putting together, they are setting the level early on, setting expectations and saying, this is who we want to be. And I love to see that for the Packers, because last year, I don't know that they had an identity. And I think this year they're seeing themselves clearly early on.
Coach, I want to pivot to you kind of in the same topic as well, because obviously it's a vanilla, game plan. You're not rolling out, your heavy hitting stuff. Joint practices are sort of becoming a thing. The Packers having a couple of them with two different teams this year. Take me into the locker room, into the coaches' meetings. What are the coaches looking for when it comes to the preseason? Now, the obvious answer is play good football, win games. But take me beyond that. What else are we looking for? Especially, like, we know Jordan Love is going to be the quarterback. We know Matthew Golden's going to be receiver number one. But take me beyond those things that we don't know, that we don't see, that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to training camp and preseason football as a coach.
Good. So the first thing, guys, is whatever you emphasize is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Whatever you emphasize is what you're going to get. Okay. So let me just play upon what you said, Peter, about the turnovers, right? Every place that I've been, the first day was ball security. I remember we were down in Atlanta, and Arthur Blank, the owner, we put him in the drill, showed him how to hang on to the football. And because if you turn the ball over, you're not going to
see him in a suit doing that. Oh my God, that's too funny.
Yeah, he is the sharpest dresser. But anyways, it was an emphasis of ball security and taking the ball away. And one of the things we were talking about before during the ball game is there's two factors that are going to win football games. And it's 90%, whether it's college or pro. If you have more takeaways and more explosive plays, if you win that double daily thing, you're going to win ball games 90% of the time. And guys, as you know, people go, well, it's third down. No, those are the two biggest factors on winning and losing games. So, whatever you emphasize is what you're going to get. It's great to see it today. I mean, 4, that's a lot. And the thing is, what happens when you start having success, you get more success, and you keep stacking successes. Go like, hey, this is what's winning games. And I'm sure that it's brought up every day about ball security and taking the ball away.
So let me stay on that point, Coach. And Peter, I'm going to get to you in a second. Does winning preseason games matter? And I know everybody likes to make jokes, and if you go undefeated in preseason and you're crown them champions, and I know the sarcasm that surrounds that, but building winning habits, building good football winning habits, does that matter by winning preseason games?
Yeah, but when you talk about building culture and habits, you're winning not just out on the field. You're winning at breakfast, you're winning during meetings, you're winning being on time, you're winning in stretch, you're everything that you're doing. It's about winning and a winning culture. It's not just like the practice, right? It's how you do things and handle yourself as a pro.
Peter, now over to you. There's been a couple of things, a couple of position battles and fringe players, a lot of things that we don't know. Obviously, we'll get into cut day coming up here shortly. But what, in your opinion, today, a 20-7 win over the Seahawks? We saw some good things from a couple of fringe players. What stood out to you in today's 20-7 win as far as those fringe players? Isaiah Simmons making a couple of good plays. I know he's not a fringe player, but I loved Anthony Belton's game today. I'm a big trenches guy. So kind of take me through your lenses and what you witnessed in today's 20-7 win.
Yeah, there were 3 players I think that stood out to me, all in the defense. You mentioned Isaiah Simmons. He needed a bounce back performance.
Absolutely.
I think he needed to show after last week. I thought the Colts game was a nightmare for him. And they love him on special teams, though. Like, Rich Bisaccia just loves him on special teams. But you have to be able to give something, I think, as an actual downtown linebacker, because this is someone who was getting run with the ones as the third linebacker in this front. And so if that's what you need, I don't think he's going to be that. I don't think you want him to be reliable there. I think they're going to have Isaiah McDuffie. I'd like to see Tyron Hopper, frankly, there. But Hopper's another guy. I mean, you think about where he was last year, where you forgot he was on the field, even in preseason. And now he's making plays, forcing fumbles, coming downhill and putting shots on guys. Like, I love what I see from Tyron Hopper. Now he still gets a little lost on play action, still kind of needs a map when it comes to that stuff. But that's a young player. And I think he's going to get some of that stuff figured out. The last guy's Kalen King. And he was someone who, is he a slot? Is he a boundary corner? I don't know for sure. They seem to like him in the slot, but when you can come in and blow up a receiver screen, that's the kind of stuff that gets coaches excited. And then he had another great run fit, comes up and had a TFL in the run game. He is a little bit smaller than the Packers normally like at corner. Did not have that great final year at Penn State after being talked like he was a first round pick at Penn State the year before. I think there's talent there. There's one spot up for grabs. And I think it comes down to him and Corey Ballantyne. They had Corey Ballantyne in camp. He played last year for them. I think it's going to come down to one of those two guys. And the question is, okay, what do you value more? The certainty of it or the upside? And I think we're going to learn a lot about what Jeff Hafley values when we get the answer to that.
Coach, after today's ball game, 27 win once again over the Seahawks in preseason, looking at the defensive side of the things, you're an offensive minded coach. Talk me through what you saw positively and negatively from the Packers defense today in the 20-7 win.
I tell you what, Seattle wanted to come into the game and they wanted to run the ball because that's what they're trying to make their identity, right? And I thought, especially the first 2 or 3 series, I thought the Packers, they looked really, really tough up front. And what they did today is they had 3 D linemen out on the field, and they took one of their linebackers. And it was 3 down personnel, but they made it a 4-man front and took a linebacker and put him outside as a defensive end, which I thought was pretty good. And then they had two pressures that they got there, and it was really good. I mean, it was really clean. It was a little bit different. It wasn't like it's just a standard blitz. Jeff brought a really nice, he drew a really nice one up, and they got home on that. So I thought they did a really, really good job that way, especially the first group.
Wait a second. I just made the connection. Jags, do you know Jeff Hafley personally, like the Boston College connection? Like, do you know him at all?
No, I don't. No, I don't. It's a tough job to win there. I know that.
We were actually just talking about that before the show because he had mentioned the job in itself. Me and Coach were talking, and Peter, I'll bring you up to speed here. If there's some concern going forward with this Packers offense, as we have mentioned, Jordan Love with the torn ligament on his non-throwing hand, Jaden Reed, most notably in a walking boot, out of it now, Dontavian Wicks battling some injuries, Tucker Kraft all the way back to family day where he missed that practice, not a big deal, but is it a concern? We'll dive into that coming up after this. Today's Locked On Packers Squad Show is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what can actually help. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. It's easy to fit in your schedule. Just click to connect, and you can even switch therapists anytime you see you need to. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners for the Locked On Packers get 10% off of their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Once again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Packers putting a bow on their preseason finale at Lambeau Field, a 20-7 win over the Seattle Seahawks, the regular season. Up next for the Packers, no Jordan Love in this one. Matthew Golden putting on a show. Josh Jacobs even got a carry. Anthony Belton, one of my favorite players, having a great game. I want to ask you, Coach Jags, and we're going to dive right into your thoughts because I hope you and Peter have different opinions on this. This is kind of my hope going into this segment. Jordan Love, thumb surgery, didn't really play in the last week and a half or so, projected to be okay. He said after the game, or during the game, he's ready to go for week 1. We mentioned there's no Jaden Reed, really all of training camp with the foot injury in a boot in Indianapolis, but he seems to be getting out of that now. Not Dontavian Wicks, as we have mentioned. with the calf injury. Rasheed Walker not healthy. Jordan Morgan has looked fantastic at left tackle and has really have grown into what we thought he would be when he was drafted in round 1 a year ago. But coach, concern level, give me a number 1 through 10, 10 being severe, 1 not being anything. What is your concern level offensively speaking when you didn't have a lot of time with Jordan Love and his receivers? And is there a cause for concern going into week 1? Now, keep in mind, week 1 is against the Detroit Lions. So you go right into a divisional matchup. And then guess what? Your prize for that week 1 matchup is a team that was almost a couple of plays away from the NFC Championship game, a Super Bowl against the this year when the Washington Commanders almost beat Philadelphia. That's your consolation prize there, is you get to play 2 games in 5 days. What's your concern level without this team having a whole lot of reps together?
That would be my biggest concern right there, Brandon, is, again, especially on offense, you have to be in rhythm. You have to be able to stay ahead of the chains, and you have to have everybody on the same page as far as where the routes are. I had talked about in the passing game, it's about spacing and timing. So you can't have, like, if you've got 2 guys like on top of each other, somebody's wrong, right? You don't want that. So my big concern is, like, how can I get my passing game up to speed? I think the running game and what they're going to do. I mean, that the running back is a good player, man. Jacobs, strong runner. So you're going to have a good running game. And the thing, let me just talk about, like, the 12 personnel. I think, Peter, they had to do that today because they were so light on the wide receiver.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much 12 they played last year, but they've got some good tight ends. But if you want to push the ball down the field, 12's not what you want to be in. All right. You want your speed guys on the field. But Brandon, I think my biggest concern is just the timing of the passing game. Like I said, the running game is going to be what it is. And they ran a lot of inside zone duo today, and the backs have a really good feel for that. They ran a couple counter gap plays, not many, and a couple at the end of the game, they were just trying to run the ball out, like toss, and I don't think that's really what they are. But the running game, I wouldn't be concerned with at all. You got a good offensive line, you got a big time back. It's the passing game, because those guys if they're not out on the field, how do you get the timing?
Well, and that's kind of what I want to get to, is because, again, what's more important to you, coach? Like, if you're in front of the team and you're talking about, make sure you're taking care of yourself, taking care of your bodies. Are preseason reps games important, or, is it being out there for joint practices, being out there for walkthroughs, being out there for installments, being out there for regular practice? Because we haven't really had a whole lot of that with all these guys because of the injuries given to each of them.
I know that's the reason I say I think that's going to be your biggest issue, is getting all those guys up to speed. Now you're going to be playing a really good football team here in 2 weeks, really good. And it's just like if you're playing basketball, right? I mean, you got to know when guys are cutting, when they're not cutting, when they're going to post up, and that's all those things you haven't been able to rep enough, in my opinion.
But for all
they're not there.
All the questions that we might have about that, and I think they're fair. Compare that to the Lions, when you're losing one of the best offensive coordinators, we think, in the NFL, and he's now in Chicago, Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. They lose their center, their second best offensive lineman, probably one of the best offensive linemen in the league. Now they're shuffling offensive pieces. They lose their defensive signal caller, Aaron Glenn, who I thought held that defense last year together with, baling wire and sheet metal. Like there was nothing, no reason that team should have been a top 5, top 10 defense last year with Aiden Hutchinson out and all the injuries that they had. And it was Aaron Glenn that held them together. They got a new guy in now. Like, are they going to be as good as they were last year? Even if they are, it's hard for me to think that continuity is going to be there week 1. So in some ways, if you're going to be injured and have these chemistry questions, I feel like if you're going to play the Lions, now is the time to do it, because middle season, late season, they may have some of that stuff ironed out. Whereas, like, John Morton, not Johnny Morton, he hasn't called plays in a handful of years. He's done it one time. He's in his mid 50s. And so it's like, okay, what does he have? What kind of chemistry does he have with Jared Goff? What does he understand about the modern game versus, 10 years ago or whatever it was when he was an offensive coordinator the last time. I guess I understand Jags's point, but at the same time, I feel like the Lions have bigger continuity questions than the Packers going into that game.
You know what Detroit has, what Campbell's done up there, is that mentality he's got with those guys. I mean, he may have some different coordinators and all that, but the message is always coming from that head guy.
Yeah.
And everybody has issues, right? And you wish you didn't have as many issues as with the timing as in the offense right now, but it is what it is. I mean, you can't, the thing that the Packers have and Detroit has in the next 2 weeks is the same amount of time to prepare.
Yeah,
exactly. Nobody's got any more. Nobody's got any less. It's how are you going to use your time to prepare, because everybody's the same, right? And so there's no advantage there one way or the other.
So Peter, where, again, kind of back to the original question, a lot of time missed with a lot of different players at certain positions. I'm not necessarily worried about the defense. Xavier McKinney's returned to practice this week. He'll be fine. I'm not necessarily worried about, up front, they've been healthy. Lucas Van Ness that's another one of my guys. That's been another guy that's been kind of, you hope that translates into the regular season. But to the offensive side of things, Peter, for a Matt LaFleur offense, to not have your quarterback, or you had him, but he's been out for a little bit. You didn't have Jaden Reed, who played a pivotal role in the offense every year he's been in the NFL so far. Dontavian Wicks, I'm still a believer, Peter, in Dontavian Wicks, the Devontae Adams version 2.0. I know. I can see the reaction there. That's where you and I will disagree.
Peter, you don't agree with that?
Real quick, Jags, before the show, Jags said, I was telling him players, I'm like, he just reminds me so much of Devontae Adams. And I know that's probably taking it a step too far. I said, but the way he releases, the way he runs routes, he just has the drops, and so did Devontae. But back to the original point, back on track, Brandon. Your thoughts on the Packers offense, Peter, not getting a lot of, not only not practice, but not a lot of joint practice, reps together. What's if there are any concern is there with you?
I think it would be different if Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, and people, I can hear them. In fact, I just heard a collective groan from portions of the audience. Oh, here we go. Peter's going to, rag on Aaron Rodgers. No, I'm not. He was more persnickety about the details. He was, if you are not running the slant with exactly the depth that I want and exactly the timing that I want, I'm just not going to throw you the ball. And Jordan Love is not like that, A. And again, that's not even a pejorative. I'm not even saying Rodgers is wrong for doing that. I just think the offense relies less on that because of the quarterback than it used to. And I think relies less on that than it did when Mike McCarthy was the coach, frankly. And I think there's a lot of offenses, like Joe Burrow, that offense, if the timing's not right, they are SOL because they cannot block anybody.
And it's never right.
Right. And so, but I don't think it has to all be perfect. We've seen it be imperfect for the Packers and have Jordan Love kind of make it work, or someone's open enough that it's okay if he waits till the second window, or the protection is good enough. Plus, so much of this offense is predicated on shot plays. So it's like, okay, as long as Jordan Love is able to get the ball out there and give these guys a chance to go get it, it's just not the same precision passing game that it used to be in Green Bay. And I think that's part of the reason why, if you're going to be optimistic about it, I think you can be a little bit more optimistic. Now, that being said, we saw Jordan Love out there against the Jets with the ones, and he's throwing the ball all over the field exactly where he wants it, right on guys' face masks, and the ball is hitting the ground.
Yeah. So
there's no helping that part of it, because that's the part that I am worried about with the rhythm of the offense. Like Jaden Reed had drops last year. Mm-hmm. Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed, two of the highest drop rate players in the league at volume last year. Those are the guys missing the reps. I'm not worried about Matthew Golden. I'm not worried about Romeo Doubs catching the ball by and large, or Luke Musgrave or Tucker Kraft. I'm worried about Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed. And those are the guys, and Savion Williams, those are the guys that are missing time. Those are the guys that can't miss the time, because once the bullets are live again, you kind of got to get back up to speed when it comes to Jordan Love and the heaters that he can throw. Like, if you're going to throw those big overs and he's going to rip some of those inbreakers, backside dig, like, you got to be ready on those plays to get your head around and get the ball, or it's a drop, or it's, a bounce off your head into the waiting arms of a free safety. And you just can't have that stuff in any offense.
Coach,
guys,
go ahead.
One of those guys. I'm sorry. One of those guys coming back. I mean, you got. I mean, you got.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur was asked about it and was asked about week one, and he almost seemed dismissive. Like, are those guys going to be back for week one? And he was just sort of like, I hope they're going to be back for week one. Like, what? Like, yeah, duh, of course they are. But like, or maybe I'm overreading it, but that was my impression of it. It seems like that's when the games matter, that those guys are going to be ready. But it's hard to know for sure. Like calf injuries, I don't know about you guys, but after the NBA playoffs, like Damian Lillard, Achilles injury after a calf injury, Jason Tatum, Achilles injury after a calf injury, Kevin Durant, Achilles injury after a calf injury, Klay Thompson, Achilles injury. Like, that's got me worried about Dontavian Wicks. Like, they need to be very careful about that one, especially because Matthew Golden's playing so well.
Yeah, I tell you, that's a really, really good point. But here's a guy like coming off of injury, right? And they haven't been going full speed. So they don't just start full speed. So they have to like rehab, right? A little bit at a time. But there's a difference between being in shape and football shape.
Right.
Huge difference. I mean, you can go ahead and the rehab and do all that, but until you're doing it live and cutting on a dime and getting across the field or changing direction, your COD, I mean, that's different than just being in rehab. And
Brandon, do you think there's any chance if Wicks or Reed are not 100% heading into week one? I guess they would have to make this decision the next couple of days, right? Because we'd have to know on cut down day. But like, if there's any chance they think those guys are not going to be 100% for week one, do you push Christian Watson?
Well, and that's the thing that I, kind of want to dive into, throughout the course, and we could talk about it during the middle part of the week. It's scary to think where this offense can go. When we talked about at the beginning of the show, the dynamics that Matthew Golden can bring enhances even more when you have a guy like Christian Watson, who, by the way, by reports, and again, no doctors are saying this, so don't come at me, but reports from reporters there, it looks like Christian Watson's 100% running, 100% cutting. He's a freak of nature. Everybody that knows me, Coach, I bought a Christian Watson jersey before my wedding. True story. And Jacob Westendorf, one of my best friends, can attest to that. I bought it before. So I'm a huge Christian Watson fan.
I guess you are.
But it was, my wife's like, what are you doing? Like, I got to put this order in. They changed his number to 9. I forgot what they initially had. But I do think Christian Watson makes his way back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I do too. But I wonder about it. He said he was running at 21 miles an hour, which, by the way, is really, really freaking fast. But that he said he can get up to 22 plus.
I think he's close, man.
If he's not at 100%, he's at like 95%, baby. Like, he's close. And all of the reporting and I was getting texts from people, people that know things, like early July, like watching this guy on the side, you would have no idea he tore his ACL in June. Or in January. Like, correct. It's crazy how quickly he has recovered, which is ironic for a guy who's been hurt his whole career.
And so just on a freak play too. Like, obviously it was a non-contact injury. The Packers were kind of just going through the motions. He probably wouldn't have played in that game if Romeo Doubs doesn't come down with the illness prior to that Bears game.
Yeah.
But
with again, a really bad case of I want the ballitis.
Yeah, exactly. Coming up, it's the preseason, as we have mentioned, the Packers putting a bow on it this afternoon at Lambeau Field, a 20-7 win over the Seahawks. Some really good things on tape for a lot of fringe players. I want to hear who maybe played their way onto this roster and who maybe played their way off from Peter and Coach Jags, taking us inside those meetings when it comes to cut day. That's all coming up right after this.
Big day.
20-7 win for the Packers at Lambeau Field. Cut day is next up prior to week one, where the Packers, for the first time in the LaFleur era, will play a home opener at Lambeau Field to begin the season, which is kind of crazy to talk about. Peter, I want to talk to you. I'll pivot over to you. We kind of mentioned a few players, a couple of fringe players on this roster. I know you had talked about it on your live Locked On Packers right after the 20-7 win over Seattle. In your opinion, did your guesses, did your predictions kind of alter throughout today's 20-7 win over the Seahawks?
Yeah, there were two names that stood out for me, and I mentioned them earlier. I don't think Tyron Hopper was in any real danger of not making this team, But I had Christian Welch on my 53. We went through the roster as I went through it earlier this week. And I think Isaiah Simmons played well enough to make me go, okay, they obviously love this guy on special teams. I mean, he's a linebacker, but he's 6'2", 230, runs 4.4, and he's going to be a gunner on the punt team. And made a great play, by the way, as a gunner in this game. And then Kalen King is the other one. I said, I don't know who that last cornerback spot is going to go to. They just don't seem thrilled about Corey Ballantyne. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't immediately go back into that sort of boundary corner 4 mold, that they have Bo Melton ahead of him and Kalen King ahead of him. That seems weird to me. They must just be we know what he is. And so I can't wait to hear from Coach about, those kinds of conversations, because they're balancing that, what he gives us now versus what he gives us in the future, I think is a really interesting question here. It's the same for Malik Heath, the numbers game piece of this. If Malik Heath is the 6th receiver, do you keep 6 knowing you're going to bring Christian Watson back? Do you need to bring 6 if those guys are healthy? I don't know. And where, that's the numbers game piece of this that makes it so tough. Do they need to keep 4 tight ends? Well, I would say no. But if they're going to play a bunch more two tight ends, and they're only going to keep, let's say, 4 off-ball linebackers, then they need another body that size for special teams. And those are the sorts of gives and takes that you have to find here that, just like Brandon, you and I are not privy to, because we're not in those meeting rooms with the coaches.
Speaking of being in those meeting rooms, we're thankful here on the Locked On Packers. I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen on the Locked On Packers squad show here live on YouTube. Coach, you have been in those rooms. You have been in those meetings. You have been in those decision-making moments. Have you ever been in a meeting with a player that was cut? And if you have, I want you to take me through what that process is like. Does it start? Do you have a list that you make in June or, throughout July and kind of narrow it down as August goes? A lot of us that cover these teams, that are fans of these teams, were like, man, that guy has played great. I think he played himself on the roster. Does that even is that a true statement? Is that even something that actually happened? So take me in to those meetings, into those moments when the roster has to go, down to 53.
Right. And that's always difficult. It's always difficult because you've had these guys from the mini camp, the OTAs, and you've just had them for a whole month and 3 preseason games. But know this, guys, every day there's a personnel meeting. It's not like, well, what do you, every day there's a personnel meeting. Goes, what do you think of this guy? Every coach goes down the list of his players. And it always comes down to who's the best. Say that it's the same. So you're talking about Simmons and Welch, Peter?
Yeah.
You're talking about those two? It's going to be like, who's the best special teams guy? It's even every place else, but who can make the most noise on
Simmons,
special
and he's going to make
teams?
the team.
And that's the number one thing if it's an even deal.
But so how do you balance, okay, I mentioned the tight end thing. Okay,
right.
We know Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Then they've got 2 backups that they like, Fitzpatrick and Ben Sims. Okay, well, then you've got this corner over here, this corner decision that you have to make. So how are those balance acts taking place? That's the piece that I'm always so fascinated by.
Right. You talked about on the special teams. So there's special teams bodies, right? It used to be there. Well, it still is. It's the tight ends. It's the safeties. It's the linebackers, right? And fullbacks when they used to have those guys, right? But
we had one on the telecast today, Jack.
You did.
So, but probably 3 tight ends is what you're going to do. And one that third tight end has got to be a ball playing Jesse. He's got to be like a deal. He's got to be a guy. Otherwise, what value does he bring to the team? So as coaches, you're sitting in those meetings and going, what value does he bring more than this kid brings? And, sometimes, the head coach always has the last say. I get just a real quick story on that. So William Henderson was the fullback, right? And then there was another kid called Devontae Leach. Remember him?
Of course.
Yeah, Pro Bowler, right? And
he had the neck roll, right?
Yeah, William. Well, those guys were fullbacks, right?
Yeah.
And William was at the end of his career, and I remember getting in it with Mike. I go, Mike, Devontae, he's better. And he goes, Jags, I had enough. You're done. So anyway, they ended up cutting and sending him to Houston, he became a all-pro fullback for like 4 years, right? But anyway, Mike didn't want to hear it, and shut up. I go, all right. There you go. If that's the way you see it. But it always comes to like, who brings the most value? Now, here's a thing that we used to tell the players too. Guys, you're sitting in your meeting room and you're looking around going, well, here's a number of guys that we're going to have. Here's how many they're going to keep, and going like, I got to beat, all those other guys, they have to beat out everybody in the league. All those guys that like the practice squad guys,
right?
They got to beat out everybody before. I mean, they're going to start. Obviously, the coaches know who those players are because they've had them. But there's a lot of guys that they've scouted all these guys too, and they knew. They go, we would have really liked to have X or Y, right? And they'll bring them onto the practice squad. So it's not. A lot of these guys they're going to be all over the country in the next 4 or 5 days. It's just,
Coach, fans are always worrying. It seems like there's a receiver every year. Oh, we're not going to be able to get this guy on the practice squad that you always hear from fans. Oh, they're not going to be able to get, Jarrett Boykin on the practice squad. And then inevitably, guess who they get on the practice squad? That guy is the guy that makes it on the practice squad. But is that part of the conversation? Like, hey, we don't think if we subject this guy to waivers, we're going to get him back? Or is it just like, we got to find our best 53 and we really can't worry about that other stuff?
No, you can't. I mean, 53, and for the most part, they know there's maybe three guys yet. They're going like, who? And again, the Simmons guy, I mean, right?
Yeah.
That's going to probably be one of them. And it always comes like, who brings the most value to your football team? And like I said, the 53, but those practice squad guys, there's 16 of them. And that's changed so much. And I was telling Brandon before we were talking, like, you talk about like all these spring leagues, like the USFL, XFL, UFL, all of those, why those leagues aren't as good is because there's 192 other players in the NFL that are on practice squad. That's why those leagues aren't that's where all the players are. There's just not enough guys to go around. Right. So all that 192 players that are in the league would have been available for those spring leagues, but they're not. They're all in practice squads now.
Brandon, is there a guy that you're just like, I know he might not make the 53, but God, I hope he makes it on the practice squad?
Well, I think Kalen Kane for me, because I remember when he was drafted out of Penn State, I was high on him prior to the draft. Then I think they got him in the 6th round. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the 7th round. Yeah, 7th round. So it's been a guy that I've kind of had my eye on for Green Bay, obviously from draft day. So I do think that there's a moment. And again, cornerback room's not great. There's a little worry there if you're a Packers fan with Keyshawn Nixon leading the charge, overall and depth wise for Green Bay. But Kalen Kane for me is the guy. And Brenton Cox Jr. is another one. And I think he's going to make the initial 53. But I don't think right now there's a player that I have on my mind, Peter, that, if the Packers were to not put him on the initial 53, that he would not survive the practice squad, selection. So for me, though, for the two players, again, Brenton Cox Jr., I do think this team also keeps Isaiah Simmons. I do. I think for special teams purposes, I think he's going, I don't want to say he's a lock, but it sounds like if you hear Rich Bisaccia talk, it sounds like he's a lock, despite the bad play at the linebacker position. So I do think, Kalen Kane's one of those names, Brenton Cox Jr. and Isaiah Simmons. I do think all three of those guys do survive the 53, though.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the Georgia guys, the two rookies, Warren Brinson, 91, and Nazir Stackhouse, 93. I mean, Stackhouse was getting run with the ones in practice.
Yeah, great training camp.
After last week, seems like he's been having a really good camp. I mentioned Warren Brinson on that interception to end joint practices. Warren Brinson wrecked the left tackle for Seattle, wrecked him. And like, those are the reps I didn't see at Georgia regularly because Georgia didn't ask him to do that. And if they're going to run, Coach talked about some of these not new, but new for Jeff Hafley and the Packers this year, some of those 3 true defensive line fronts with, potentially 2 more edge guys. He's the perfect 5 technique body type to me. You want to have him play a 4-eye or a 5 tech. Like, he can do some of that stuff. I did not love that draft pick when they made it, but it's like a 6th round pick. So like, who cares? But he's been really impressive in camp. And so I hope they find a way to make both of those guys. But to Coach's point, when it comes down to special teams, how do you justify keeping 6 defensive tackles? I think that's tricky. There's 6 that I really like.
But the thing is, they played the 3 down. You're going to see that. They're going to see that 3 down, and it's going to be a 4 down look, but it's a 3 down with a linebacker playing out on the edge, especially in passing situations.
Yeah.
You're really good. It looked really good today, I thought.
Couple more minutes here before we get things wrapped up on the inaugural Locked On Packers Squad Show. A big part of this show, and I think you guys would agree, are the people that are listening, certainly those that are live right now over on YouTube. So if you're on the YouTube chat, number one, thank you. Thank you for always making Locked On Packers part of your day each and every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you guys get audio podcasts, as well as over on YouTube, Locked On Packers. So if you're over on YouTube, or if you're listening to the show and you're going back, remember, you can join the program live after each game, as well as midweek on Wednesday evenings. So your thoughts and your reactions are all welcomed on the program. I do want to read up a couple of comments to you guys, and I want you guys to react. Let's start with Rocky Mountain over on YouTube. How big is week 1? He says it's huge. 13-4 takes the division. 12-5 is second. I think the Packers and Lions end 1-2. So week 1 is a division favorite entering week 18. He thinks the Vikings are 10-7. They'll eventually make the playoffs, and he thinks the Bears could be 7-10. But how big, to the initial question, is week 1 for you guys?
I think it's huge. I mean, I think it's huge. And not just because you're going to get a division win, not just because you're going to get a win over a team that you're going to be fighting for in the playoffs, but because in the Matt LaFleur era, Dan Campbell has kind of owned Matt LaFleur. And this Lions team has, and that hurt me to say. Like, that is
that hurts to hear it.
But that
you're
is
right.
It is true. Like, if you go back and look at the numbers, it's bad. And so, and I know, like, you back in 2021 and like the week 17 game, Packers didn't care and they weren't playing their guys and like whatever. Still, Dan Campbell ran 3 trick plays in that game. They wanted to win that game, and they have taken the mantle in the NFC North. The Packers could not win big games last year for, a gaggle of reasons. So just from hey, no, we're here. You want to, sorry guys, but you want to put them on the table in week 1. You want to hear that thud week 1 and say, look, we're here. We're ready to go. We're ready to win these big games. That's what you want the Packers to show, that you're not going to go down 21-0 in the first half against the Lions. And yeah, you come all the way back or whatever it was at halftime, 24-10 or whatever it was. Like, and you have to make that furious comeback. They did it, but you want to show, hey, look, it's different this year. We are different this year. That's what you want to see from the Packers. That's why it is a huge game. Not about, it's not about moral victories. It's about going to win the damn game.
Yeah. The thing is, when we used to talk to our teams with the 16 games, it used to be, you got to win all your home games. In Green Bay, we always thought that we had the advantage of that. So there's 8, right? And you got to win 4 on the road. That's 12-4. And that would get you into the playoffs. That was the formula. That right. He said you got to win your home games. You just have to. Especially Green Bay is a home field advantage. It's just, guys, it is what it is, right? And but Dan's got those guys playing well over in Detroit too, though. So it'll be fun. It'll be a good one.
Here's a roster question from Random Grin over on YouTube, and back to the other question. I think every week is a big week. It should be a must-win week. But we have 3 or more receivers injured at all times. Capital letters every year. He's saying keep 6 at a minimum. Peter, how does that receiver room, as we have talked about at lengths this afternoon on the Locked On Packers Squad Show, how does that receiver room play out after cut down day?
I think it has to be 6. I really do. And then it comes down to, okay, you have a known quantity of Malik Heath, who as a blocker, as a, once upon a time, Matt LaFleur called Alan Lazard, a war daddy, just because he can go in and do that stuff. And you saw it in this game, guys. Like, there were a couple of times they asked Matthew Golden to come and insert block on some of these power runs, and he just can't do it because he's 5'10", 190. Malik Heath is 6'3", 215 or whatever he is, and he will try and put you in the ground. And so, okay, that guy versus Mecole Hardman, who's been a contributor for Super Bowl teams. He's got 2 rings in his cabinet. I think they have enough talent to go to 6, no question. But then when Christian Watson comes back, they may have some decisions to make, because I think 7's getting aggressive. Now, hey, who knows? By then, maybe Savion Williams is on IR. Maybe, Bob McGinn, the great Packers beat writer always said injuries have a way of sorting things out. You never actually have too many guys. I'd love to hear Coach's perspective on that. Bob again always said, well, he always said, no, just on the idea that you never really have too many guys. Injuries always have a way of sorting these things out.
Yeah. I think you have to keep 6, but and again, 3 tight ends, right? I mean, you're not going to have the luxury, Peter, to have 4. There's no way.
No.
There's just, you're not going to be able to do that. Or they may have, and again, there may be a guy out there too, another receiver that they may feel better than what's on the Packer roster right now. And that's what I'm saying. When all these guys are looking around, you've got the whole league. Everybody's cutting down, right? And there's going to be so many numbers. And they go, hey, that kid, you know what? I had that guy, or one of the coaches might have had him at a different spot on a different team. Go, well, this is what this kid can bring. And the guy's a good special teams player. So
maybe someone like Grant Dubose, who I think the Buffalo recently signed. Maybe he doesn't make the final 53, and the Packers are able to, bring him back, something like that. Guys, this was an absolute blast. I cannot wait to do this with you every week, every game, Wednesday nights after the games as well. We will be here on the Locked On Packers podcast feed. Locked On Packers, the squad show. It's Coach Jags. It's Brandon Snide. I'm Peter Bukowski. Go follow us on the social medias. Follow the podcast on social media. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts so you can stay locked on Packers Squad Show.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.